I wanted to mention, even though, I don't support any of the Christian nationalists, and I'm a Christian, and I love America, and yes, it was founded on Christian values. And yet, the founders, I think they did the best they could, trying to stay out of the traps. But ultimately, I mean, some of them they missed, okay, with, women not having the right to vote. It's simple. If you want to base everything on the Bible, okay, you cannot have unity with God when you're still acting as if man is below woman, because that only came as a result of the sin. So when you want to continue that behavior, because you're showing that you're still using it as a stumbling, God will use it as a stumbling block, because when God told Eve that he would rule over her, or that man would rule over her, it is because of the sin. So the last thing you want to do is then continue to act in that behavior, because that was only a result of the sin. But man and woman has taken on these constructs of, femininity came as a result of the masculinity. The moment the sin happened, God knew man was going to run on their own free will, their masculinity, and then use that as a reason. And God uses all that. And so even though I'm a Christian, you'd think, oh, well, you should support Christian nationalism. I don't, because I don't see many of the churches as knowing God. And some of them I don't, really want to rip, because, I get frustrated. I get so frustrated. And often, many days I just say, God, why? Why, what? I'm not the person to do this. I'm not the person to, speak up. Okay, I mean, I'll stand up and do the right thing, but I mean, just for the sake of, I know it's the right thing to do. And look, I've learned in life, it just, people will go after you for standing up for the right thing. They just will. They'll find their subtle ways to target you, and so you learn what this world is about. So it's better to show somebody that has a success track, of being able to motivate people. All right, I'm not anything close to being a motivator. All right, I've never tried. I don't even like motivational speeches, because I think a lot of them are just, are BS. They sound good, and yes, can they do some good in some people's lives? Yes, but the reason I've never really talked about my faith until the last 5 years, okay? I mean, even with people that know me, that I've worked with, I just don't. Not because I'm ashamed of it, but because it's nobody. It's not important. I mean, it's important to me, but it's not important to, like, put on a banner and tell everybody, oh, this is what I am. It's just what I've needed to do to keep, to stay sober. And so it's always troubled me when God started getting my attention more than he's gotten my attention before. And then the last 5 years, it's like everything I'm doing, it's like it's hurting me. It's hurting me. And so this world would say, well, see, you're doing everything wrong. No, but that Jesus didn't make it about himself either. That was the example everybody was supposed to take from. Look at the world we've all created. It's all about your dreams and your desires, and because man has this lack of faith, and so I think many of them look at it like, well, yes, I believe in God. I'm here to fulfill my dreams and desires, and I'll believe in God, and then when I die, I'll get to be in paradise. And yeah, that's not what it is. It's not. You're in the fallen world still, and I think that has been forgotten. Now Jesus came to repair that. Jesus lifted the curse. But as I said, what really was the curse? It wasn't God putting a curse down. God didn't do it. God knew that the sin would bring I'm going to run on free will no matter what, even opposing God, but I'm going to lie to myself and fool myself and tell myself that I believe in God and this is what God would want. Does anything look like it's about what Jesus is? Mm-mm. And that doesn't mean create a bunch of churches. The creating of the hierarchies and the church structures, that, and and then I sit back and I say, but God uses that all to the way He needs to use it, So I sometimes go too far, and I don't mean to be critical. I really don't. I don't have a lot of trust in anybody. I just don't. I've made the mistake of putting trust in too many wrong people. So you could say that, it's sort of I only trust God. So the way I understand God is the Bible, but it's very different than what the churches have taught. Everything the churches have taught has served the church structure and the government. And yet Jesus, I look at Jesus and then I look at them and I'm like, yeah, there's just a big difference here. And those are a lot of the truths that God has brought, to me, is that none of it is a representation of me. And you can say, oh, but we don't do that in America. Okay, but at the end of the day, the Creator it doesn't matter. I mean, at some point, it will be about His will, whether you like it or not. Okay? He spends all this time because He doesn't want to interfere, knowing that, again, why was Revelations written? Because He knew He would eventually have to come up against free will. Because even if man knows that's what they should completely do, is surrender, they will not do it. They won't. They're too used to this kingdom, most especially man. Okay? And so you've put your own stories around what Jesus is, and that, Jesus' paradise is once we're in heaven. No, Jesus, it was all about bringing it back here. And I think that the Old and New Testament truly show that God has expectations of people, not just with keeping the commandments, but that you're going to grow. And at every step of the way, whether it's been the churches, even though some of them not meaning to, have not wanted to grow. They've not wanted to look at some of these scriptures that they're sure they understand and say to themselves, are we sure we got this right? Because a lot of them you haven't. Because Jesus, it was written so that people would learn it with the shepherd. Not learn it in seminary school, not learn it in a divinity class at Yale or Harvard or whatever university, not learn it because the Pope's going to teach it to you. These are all people that, whether they know it or not, they've created what they envisioned. Because again, it's in the Bible how man leans on their own understanding. They use their own human wisdom. So see, I try to stay out of that trap. And so the last 5 years, what God's done with me is He's emptied me. I've lost so much, and this world would point to me and say, you're a total loser. But what grandness did Jesus have other than the grandness of who He was? Nothing. So he was the example to follow. No nation has done that. I understand America does hold a prophecy here, and it was to make the Jews jealous, the ones that not all of them, because you won't get all of them, but the remnant God wants to call back. That's literally in the New Testament. That makes sense, the way America, was formed and all of that. And so God knew there would be all these obstacles along the way, and He uses it to serve His goals in the end. I just ultimately, you're not going to get people that are going to be able to institute God if you really want God back and not have the adversary one continually calling the shots regardless of who you elect. It's because it's not them that are the adversary. It's that global adversary that affects all governments. If you want that to stop, it means total surrender to God.